A bomb-sniffing canine isn't supposed to rush into a hospital. Not at midnight. Not in a crowded ER full of tired nurses and fragile breaths. But that's exactly what happened in Baltimore. And the dog didn't lock onto a backpack or an abandoned suitcase. It locked onto a rookie nurse. Here's what should scare you. When a trained canine alerts, it isn't guessing, it's remembering. And sometimes what it remembers isn't a bomb. It's a past that was buried on purpose. Picture it. Fluorescent lights, cold coffee, your feet aching after a double shift, the medication cart squeaking like it's complaining with you. Then the secured side door opens and the room goes quiet in a way your body understands before your mind does. Stay to the end, and you'll see how a single alert can expose a hidden war inside a place meant to heal. If you're watching, like the video and comment where you're watching from. The silence did not end when the dog sat. It thickened, spreading through Harborview Mercy's emergency department, like a pressure change you could feel in your teeth. The fluorescent lights kept buzzing. The monitors kept chirping. A distant suction pump kept its wet rhythm. But every human voice had stopped, as if someone had reached into the room and pinched the sound off. Mako sat squarely in front of the medication cart, eyes fixed on Lauren Hayes. His ears were forward, his chest still, his mouth closed. He was not panting. He was not excited. He looked like a machine that had found a target. Lauren did not move. She stood with both hands resting on the edge of the cart, fingers lightly curled around the metal rail. Her scrub top was plain navy, the kind the hospital handed out in bulk. Her badge hung from a clear clip at her waist. Lauren Hayes, RN. Beneath that, in smaller print, it said, New Grau Program. A lie that had kept her alive. 2 steps away, Sergeant Ethan Cole held the leash in a tight grip, as if the nylon could anchor reality back into place. His face had lost color. The tactical uniform made him look like he belonged in a different world than this one. There were people on gurneys behind him, with curtain tracks overhead, and plastic IV bags glowing under the lights. There was a toddler, crying into a blanket in the corner. There was a man with a broken wrist cradling it like a wounded animal. There was a unit clerk staring with wide eyes at the dog and the nurse like she had walked into a movie and forgot her lines. A security officer at the nurse's station cleared his throat and immediately stopped. His hand hovered near his belt. Someone behind Lauren, a resident with sleep creases on his cheeks, whispered, "Step away from her." Lauren's gaze stayed on Mako. She could see the faint tremor in his whiskers, the tiny recalibration of his nose as he worked the air. She knew that look. She knew what it meant when a dog stopped searching the room and started searching a person. Ethan's voice came out low, rough. "Ma'am, nurse, I need you to take one slow step back." Lauren blinked once. "If you think it's a device," she said, "you're already late." It was a simple sentence. Plain, almost polite. But it landed like a hand on Ethan's throat. He swallowed. "That's not how this works." Lauren's eyes lifted for the first time, meeting his. They were steady, clear, tired in a way that had nothing to do with a double shift. "It is," she said. "You're just used to looking at the wrong thing." Ethan's jaw tightened. He glanced down at the dog, then back at her. "Mako doesn't do this. Dogs do what they're trained to do," Lauren replied. Around them, the emergency department began to move again in small, uneasy ways. A patient's curtain rattled as someone tugged it closed. A nurse pulled a gurney backward until its wheels bumped a wall. A man in a Ravens hoodie stood from his chair and immediately sat back down as if his legs had forgotten their job. The sound of rubber soles on tile came from the hallway as more hospital security arrived, drawn by whatever message had hit their radios. Marisol Vega appeared through the crowd like a blade cutting cloth. She was Harborview Mercy's security chief, compact and solid hair, slicked back eyes sharp enough to make people straighten without knowing why. Her uniform was dark and practical. Her posture had the calm of someone who had seen panic up close and did not worship it. She took in the scene in a single sweep. The bomb dog, the handler, the nurse, the circle of staff and patients forming a loose ring around them. Marisol raised her voice, not loud, Just clean. Clear this area. Now. Curtains closed. Move patients to bays. Keep the main exit open. A few people started to obey, grateful for an instruction that did not involve thinking. Ethan lifted a hand toward Marisol. Chief Vega, do not let anyone touch that nurse. Do not let her leave. Lauren's lips pressed together. She did not smile, but something in her expression hinted at it, a flicker of humor that had no warmth. Marisol's eyes narrowed. Sergeant, this is my hospital. Ethan's gaze stayed fixed on Lauren as he spoke. Ma'am, are you carrying anything? Lauren looked down at herself as if seeing her scrubs for the first time. She patted the pockets. Pen, gloves, a roll of tape I stole from Central Supply. Nothing that explodes. Ethan's throat worked. Are you wearing anything under your scrubs? A vest. A belt. Lauren's eyes cooled. Are you asking me to strip in front of the pediatric waiting room? Marisol shifted half a step closer. Sergeant. Ethan held up his free hand, a silent apology. His breathing was controlled, but his pulse showed at his neck. Ma'am, I'm not trying to disrespect you. I'm trying to keep people alive. Lauren leaned a fraction toward him, not aggressive, just close enough that her voice could drop without disappearing. Then start by listening, she said. Your dog is not searching for a bomb. Ethan stared at her. He's a bomb detection dog. He's a detection dog, Lauren said, careful with the words. You decide what you call the thing he finds. Mako shifted his weight and sat harder, repeating the alert. His gaze never left Lauren. That second sit tightened the air again. Even Marisol's face changed slightly, a micro shift that said she understood this was no misunderstanding. Ethan crouched beside Mako, one hand sliding under the dog's collar, grounding him. Buddy. He murmured, his voice softer now. Tell me. Mako's body stayed rigid. His nose lifted, then returned to hover near Lauren's torso, not touching her, just tasting what the air offered. Lauren kept her hands where they were. She forced herself to breathe slow through her nose. The smell was there, faint under antiseptic and hand sanitizer, a metallic note that did not belong in an ER. It was not dramatic. It was small. That was the problem. The worst things were always small at first. Ethan stood again. Have you been near explosives recently? Construction sites, fireworks, shooting ranges, anything like that? Lauren shook her head. No. Ethan watched her face, hunting for a lie. Any military surplus stores, old gear. Someone give you a souvenir? No. Ethan's eyes flicked to Marisol. She's clean? No bag, no device, nothing visible. Marisol's voice stayed steady. Then what is your dog smelling? Ethan looked at Lauren again, his expression almost pleading. Help me understand. Lauren's gaze shifted to Mako. Her voice softened, not for the people, but for the animal. Good boy, she said quietly. You're working. Mako's tail gave a single controlled twitch. Not happy, not relaxed. Acknowledgement. Ethan froze. Lauren noticed. She could not stop herself from noticing. Ethan's eyes snapped up. That phrase, he said. That tone. Who taught you to talk to a working dog? Lauren did not answer. Marisol's radio crackled with overlapping voices. Lockdown in ER. We need corridors cleared. Who authorized a bomb unit in triage? Marisol pressed the radio mic. All units keep your distance. No one touches the dog. No one touches the nurse. Hold until I say otherwise. A unit clerk, voice shaking, asked, Do we call administration? Marisol did not turn her head. They already know. As if on cue, the overhead speakers clicked and a calm recorded voice filled the department. Attention staff. This facility is initiating limited lockdown procedures. Please remain in your assigned areas. Limited lockdown. Words meant to sound gentle. Steel wrapped in cotton. A physician in a white coat pushed through the crowd, face drawn with the strain of too many nights like this. Dr. Priya Nandakumar, the ICU attending, who often floated down when the ED needed a steady hand. Her eyes landed on Mako, then Lauren, then Ethan. She did not ask why there was a bomb dog. She asked what mattered. Who is in charge here? Priya said. Marisol lifted her chin. Security. For the moment. Priya nodded once, accepting it. Then tell me what you need from my staff. Ethan spoke before Marisol could. Space. No sudden movements. Nobody leaves. Priya's gaze moved to Lauren. Lauren. Lauren's shoulders stayed square, but a thin line of tension appeared at her jaw. Doctor. Priya studied her the way a good clinician studied a patient. Not just the face, the posture, the stillness, the breathing that did not match the room. You're okay, Priya asked. Lauren held Priya's gaze. I'm standing, she said. That's the same thing in some places. Priya's eyes narrowed slightly. She did not press. A resident stepped up behind Priya. Hair messy hands tucked into his scrub pockets, exhaustion painted into his posture. Dr. Jonah Price, chief resident, a man who believed the hospital ran on rules because he had never watched rules burn. He looked at Lauren's badge and then at Ethan. Sergeant, this is a nurse. You cannot detain hospital staff without cause. Ethan's eyes stayed hard. Cause is my dog. Jonah scoffed. That's not probable cause. Mako sat again. Jonah's scoff died halfway out of his mouth. Lauren spoke with quiet precision. He's not wrong, she said. He's just early. Priya turned her head slightly. Early for what? Lauren's eyes drifted toward the ceiling vents, then back. For the part where people start feeling it. Ethan's face tightened. Feeling what? Lauren's gaze met his, and for a fraction of a second, the calm slipped just enough to show something older underneath. Not fear. Memory. Residue, she said. It clings. It travels. It teaches your lungs to forget what they're for. Marisol stared at her. What are you talking about? Lauren's fingers tightened on the medication cart rail. Metal bit into her skin. She welcomed the pain. Pain was real. It kept her here. Ethan's voice dropped. You said that like you've seen it. Lauren did not answer. She did not need to. Her silence said enough. Priya's gaze sharpened. Marisol, get my ICU charge nurse on the line. I want a quick symptom check. Any unexplained tremors, seizures, respiratory distress. Jonah blinked. We are not chasing ghost toxins because a dog sat down. Priya's eyes cut to him. We are not ignoring patterns because you are tired. Do it. Jonah opened his mouth, then closed it. He pulled his phone, already stepping away. The department began to shift into a new kind of motion. Not panic. Procedure. Curtains closed. Patients moved. Doors watched. The world narrowing. Ethan stepped closer to Lauren, careful not to spook Mako. You're telling me he's alerting to residue on you, he said. That doesn't happen in a hospital. Lauren's eyes stayed on his face. It shouldn't, she replied. Ethan swallowed. Where would you pick up residue like that? Lauren breathed in. Antiseptic, rubber, sweat. Under it, the faint metallic wrongness that had haunted her for years. Not here, she said. Ethan waited. Lauren's voice stayed low. You trained him overseas. Ethan's posture changed. A small stiffening, like a muscle remembering an old injury. Lauren's gaze did not move, yet Ethan's mouth went dry. How would you know that? Lauren finally looked down at Mako, letting her eyes soften. She lifted her hand slowly, palm down, stopping just above his head without touching. Mako's ears twitched, his body holding. Lauren's voice was almost gentle. High heat, she said. Dust in the air that tastes like pennies. Improvised compounds mixed with solvents that don't show up on cheap sensors. Dogs catch what machines miss. Ethan stared at her. The world around them blurred, but he heard everything she said. Not because it was poetic, because it was accurate in the way only lived experience could be. He whispered, Who are you? Lauren's hand lowered until her fingers brushed Mako's fur, once light like permission. The dog did not flinch. He accepted the touch as if it belonged. Ethan's eyes widened. Marisol saw it too. Her hand rose slightly, a silent signal to her officers to hold. Lauren lifted her eyes again. I'm the nurse on duty, she said. Ethan's voice cracked on frustration. That's not what I asked. Lauren's gaze held his. It's the only answer that keeps this place from turning into a war zone, she replied. A cough sounded nearby, sharp and sudden. A nurse at the triage desk cleared her throat, and pressed her fingers to her lips, as if surprised by the taste in her mouth. Metal, the nurse murmured. Anyone else taste metal? Priya's head turned at once. Jonah returned phone in hand, eyes narrowed. ICU says they have one patient complaining of dizziness, he said. One. That's not a chemical attack. Lauren's expression did not change, but her eyes flicked to the nurse who had just spoken. It starts like that, she said. Jonah looked at her irritation sharpening into something else. And you know that, because Lauren's voice stayed calm. Because it always starts like that. Ethan's radio crackled again, louder this time, stepping over other channels as if it had priority. He lifted it to his mouth, then froze. A voice came through, clipped and professional. Sergeant Cole, confirm. Did your K-9 generate a high-risk signature in a civilian facility? Ethan's throat tightened, confirming an alert, he said. But it's on a person. Silence on the line, not confusion. Calculation. Then the voice returned colder. Hold position. Federal auto notification triggered. Agents inbound. Do not release the subject. Lauren's eyes shifted to Ethan's radio, then back to his face. There it is, she said quietly. Ethan stared at her. You knew that would happen. Lauren did not deny it. Your system listens for certain smells, she said. Some of them are tied to names that aren't supposed to exist. Marisol's eyes narrowed. Federal auto notification, she repeated. From a dog. Ethan swallowed. There's an escalation protocol for certain signatures, he said. I was told it was a safeguard. Rare. Old. Priya's expression hardened. Old protocols have a way of waking up when you least want them to. Lauren's gaze stayed steady. Waking up is what they do, she said. They don't forget. The ER doors hissed open and closed as more staff moved behind curtains. A child's cry rose again, thin and frightened. Somewhere deeper in the hospital, a code bell chimed once, then stopped as if it had been pressed by accident. The building felt like it was holding its breath. Ethan crouched again, fingers on Mako's collar. Buddy, he whispered. Talk to me. Is it her? Or is it something near her? Mako's nose dipped. He sniffed the air around Lauren's scrubs, then shifted slightly, head turning toward the main hallway. His body tensed. His paws adjusted. Not an alert this time. A decision. Lauren's eyes followed the dog's head movement. She felt it like a chill between her shoulder blades. He's catching drift, she said. Ethan looked up. Drift from what? Lauren's voice tightened by a degree. From the source. Marisol stepped forward. If there is a source inside my hospital, I need to know where. Lauren's gaze flicked down the corridor that led toward imaging, then beyond that, toward critical care. Air returns, she said quietly. It moves where people don't watch. It rides linens, gloves, privacy curtains. It hides in routine. Jonah shook his head. This is insane. Priya's eyes did not leave Lauren. Lauren, she said, voice low and direct. If you think there's exposure, tell me what to look for. Lauren took a slow breath. Skin gets pale, she said. Then gray. Breathing gets shallow, like they're trying not to inhale. Tremors. Confusion. Seizures if the dose hits hard enough. It does not act like the stuff in textbooks. Priya's jaw tightened. And treatment. Lauren's eyes stayed on Priya. Isolation, she said. Barriers. Vent control if you can manage it. And you find the source before it finds everyone. Priya nodded once, already turning. Marisol, I want that hallway locked down. Ethan, keep your dog on leash. Lauren with me. Jonah stepped in front of Lauren without thinking. No, he said. She is not leaving this department with a tactical unit. Lauren looked at him, and the look was almost pity. Doctor, she said softly. You think this is about permission. Jonah's nostrils flared. It is about authority. Lauren's voice stayed even. Authority is what you have when nothing is on fire, she replied. Right now, you need competence. It was not an insult. It was a fact delivered like a bandage pressed hard. Jonah opened his mouth, then stopped. His eyes flicked to Priya. Priya's expression told him he had lost this round. Footsteps sounded from the secured corridor. Two people entered without asking, moving with the quiet confidence of those who were used to walking into rooms where everyone else went silent. They wore plain clothes, no visible badges, Their posture carried the same threat as a weapon, even without one. A woman with dark hair pulled tight at the nape of her neck, eyes sharp, scanned the ER in a single sweep. A man beside her moved slower, face unreadable gaze calculating like a ledger. Ethan straightened at once. "Agent Kerr," he said. The woman nodded without warmth. Ethan's eyes flicked to the man. "Agent Brody." Brody did not nod. He simply looked at Lauren as if she were an entry on a list he had not expected to see again. Lauren did not move. She watched them the way she watched the dog, with quiet attention that looked like calm but felt like tension under skin. Agent Dana Kerr stepped closer. Her voice was low, precise. "Lauren Hayes," she said, pronouncing the name carefully. Lauren's chin lifted a fraction. "That's what the badge says." Agent Miles Brody's gaze did not blink. "It is not what the system says," he replied. Marisol's hand rose slightly protective. "This is my facility," she said. "You do not walk in and start interrogating my staff." Kerr's eyes slid to Marisol. "Chief Vega," she said, and the way she knew the name without introduction made Marisol's expression tighten. "This is not a hospital matter anymore." Priya stepped forward, voice controlled. "People are sick," she said. "If you have resources, use them to help." Brody's gaze stayed on Lauren. "We are here to contain a breach," he said. "And she is part of it." Lauren's lips pressed together. She could feel the eyes on her now, from behind curtains and over shoulders. Fear shifting into suspicion. Suspicion into ung. People always wanted a reason for chaos. If they could place it on a person, they would. Kerr glanced down at Mako, then at Ethan. "Confirm the dog's alert pattern," she said. Ethan's voice was tight. He alerted on her. Then he oriented toward the ICU corridor. "He is tracking something." Kerr's expression did not soften. "Keep the dog close," she said. "Do not let him roam. Not here." Lauren watched Kerr's eyes. Not fear, not surprise. Recognition. Lauren spoke, voice quiet enough that it did not invite the room. "You know what he's smelling?" she said. Kerr's gaze snapped to Lauren. "Be careful," she said. Lauren's eyes held. "That's what you told me before," she replied. A flicker crossed Kerr's face. Small, human, gone, in an instant. Brody's voice cut in. "We need her secured," he said. Priya's jaw tightened. "You need her functioning," she corrected. "If people are being exposed, I need every skilled set of hands I can get." Brody did not look at Priya. "Doctor, your staff will follow containment protocol." Priya's voice sharpened. "My staff will keep patients alive." A sound rose from the hallway, distant at first, then immediate. A monitor alarm. Rapid beeps. A shout that carried panic through controlled space. A nurse's voice came over the intercom, strained and breathless. "Emergency department incoming trauma. 2 minutes out. Rollover. Unstable vitals." The ER shifted like a body bracing for impact. Curtains snapped. Hands moved. A respiratory therapist ran past with a bag valve mask. A tech rolled a crash cart into position, wheels rattling. Lauren's gaze flicked toward the ambulance entrance. She felt the familiar snap in her mind, the place where fear and focus became the same thing. Ethan tightened his grip on the leash. Mako rose to his feet, ears forward, tracking the movement and noise. Priya looked at Lauren, and in that look was a decision. "With me," she said. Brody stepped forward as if to block her. Lauren did not ask permission. She simply moved, sliding around him with the ease of someone who knew how to pass through tight spaces without touching a blade. Her hands were already reaching for gloves, her mind already sorting priorities by weight and time. As the trauma bay doors swung open and the sound of the incoming gurney hit the room like thunder, Mako's nails clicked once on the tile, and his body aligned with Lauren as if the only command that mattered had already been given. The trauma bay doors slammed open and the room filled with motion like a tide. Wheels rattled, plastic crinkled voices layered over one another in clipped phrases that sounded calm only because everyone was trained to make panic useful. A gurney burst through the threshold with 2 paramedics braced on either side. The patient was a middle-aged man, skin slick with sweat, jaw clenched, eyes half open but unfocused. Dried blood streaked his temple. His chest rose too fast, too shallow, like his body was trying to inhale without committing to it. Roll over, one paramedic said. Pinned for 8 minutes. Found him altered. Sat dropped to the low 80s. He's been sliding the whole ride. Priya Nandakumar stepped into position at the head of the bed without hesitation. Jonah Price moved to her right, already reaching for the chart that did not exist yet. A respiratory therapist rolled in with a bag valve mask and oxygen snapping a line into place. Lauren was there before anyone asked for her. Gloves on hands, steady eyes taking inventory the way a pilot scans a cockpit before a landing. The patient's monitor screamed with its own language. Heart rate 140. Blood pressure drifting down. Oxygen saturation flashing angry red. Name, Jonah asked. Unknown. The paramedic answered. Wallet got lost in the wreck. We've got a temporary band number. Unknown. The worst kind of name. Priya leaned close, palm on the patient's sternum, voice firm. Sir, can you hear me? The man's lips moved. A breath rasped out like gravel. His eyes rolled, then fixed briefly on Priya's face without recognition. Lauren watched his chest. One side lagged, subtle but real. The left looked like it was rising out of duty, while the right did the work. She stepped closer, fingers sliding under the patient's jawline to feel the angle, the tension in the neck. Not swollen. Not yet. Her eyes flicked to the collarbone, the shape of the ribs under skin. The respiratory therapist fit the oxygen mask. The patient jerked against it, instinct fighting assistance. Hold him, Priya said. 2 techs leaned in, gentle but firm. The man's hands fluttered, then fell limp again. Lauren placed 2 fingers at the patient's wrist. The pulse was fast and thin, like a thread pulled tight. Priya's gaze cut to Jonah. Get me lung sounds. Jonah snapped a stethoscope into his ears, leaned down, and listened. He moved left, then right. His brow tightened. Diminished on the left, he said, then listened again as if the second time might change the truth. Lauren felt the air in the room shift. Not panic. Recognition. The monitor beeped faster. The patient's oxygen dipped again. The number fell, then fell harder as if gravity had taken control. Priya turned. Prepare for intubation. The respiratory therapist nodded, already reaching for laryngoscope equipment, drawing up meds. Jonah called out doses. A nurse ran to the med cart. Lauren did not move away. She leaned in close enough to feel the patient's breath on her wrist. And she watched his throat, the muscles straining for air. Not yet, she said. Jonah's head snapped up. What? Lauren's voice stayed calm. If you intubate him like this, you might lock the problem in place. Jonah's eyes flashed. He's hypoxic. I see the number, Lauren replied. I also see why it's dropping. Priya's gaze held Lauren's for a beat, measuring. Priya was an ICU doctor, but she had trained in enough chaos to respect a calm voice that did not wobble. Lauren, Priya said low, tell me what you see. Lauren placed her fingers just below the left rib line, pressing gently. The patient's abdomen was tense, but it was not abdomen that drew her attention. It was the way the chest felt, the tightness under the ribs, like trapped pressure looking for release. She slid her hand to the left side of the chest and listened without a stethoscope, ears catching what the room offered. Breath sound? There was not absent. It was wrong. Thin. Reluctant. Left side, Lauren said. It's not ventilating like it should. Jonah shook his head. We need imaging. We need air out now, Lauren answered. Jonah scoffed. You are a nurse. Lauren's eyes did not leave the patient. He has seconds, she said. The blood pressure dropped again. The number blinked as if uncertain it belonged there at all. Priya's jaw tightened. She leaned in and listened again herself. One more inhale. One more exhale. She palpated the chest, ran her hand along the sternum, then touched the left side where Lauren's fingers had been. The skin felt tight. The patient's breathing became more frantic, then suddenly shallow, as if he was losing the strength to fight for each breath. Priya's voice sharpened. Stop talking. Start acting. Jonah stared at Priya. You're going to let her call this. Priya's gaze stayed on the patient. I'm going to let anyone call it if they're right. Lauren looked up, meeting Priya's eyes. Needle decompression, she said. Now. The respiratory therapist froze mid-motion with the intubation tray. The techs looked between Priya and Jonah, as if waiting for a permission slip. Priya inhaled once and made a decision that did not ask anyone's opinion. Get the kit. A nurse moved fast, pulling a sealed package from the crash cart. Jonah opened his mouth again. Priya cut him off with a single look. If you want to debate hierarchy, do it after he has oxygen. Lauren took the kit. Her fingers did not tremble. Not because she did not feel the weight of the room, but because she had learned long ago that shaking hands killed people. She tore the packaging open and laid the contents on a sterile drape with efficient precision. She did not hurry. She moved like time belonged to her. Jonah's voice came tight. This is not within nursing scope, Priya answered without looking at him. Then I am ordering it. Lauren positioned herself at the patient's left side. She found the landmark with her fingertips counting ribs, the way some people counted rosary beads. The patient's eyes fluttered unfocused. A thin sound escaped him, half groan, half breath. Lauren glanced at Priya. Priya nodded once. Lauren inserted the needle with a practiced angle. For half a second, nothing happened. Then, a sharp hiss cut through the bay, a sound so small it should not have mattered, and yet it changed everything. The patient's chest rose, deeper, cleaner. The oxygen number climbed shaky at first, then steadier, like a man pulling himself back from water. A breath released from the room that nobody realized they had been holding. Jonah blinked, stunned. The respiratory therapist exhaled through pursed lips. Nice, he murmured, as if the word could keep the moment from becoming something else. Lauren did not look up. She was already securing the catheter, already adjusting the patient's position, already watching for the next thing that would try to kill him. Priya's voice steadied the team. Now we intubate if needed. Hold and reassess. The respiratory therapist moved again. Confidence restored, hands sure. The patient's vitals steadied enough to make procedures feel less like a gamble. In the corner of the bay, just outside the immediate circle, Ethan Cole stood with Mako at his side. The dog was not lying down. He was not pacing. He stood still, watching Lauren's hands with a focus that made the hair on Ethan's arms lift beneath his sleeves. Agent Dana Kerr and Agent Miles Brody had followed the commotion without asking permission. They watched from the doorway, like people who had seen violence in clean rooms before and recognized it in a hospital too. Brody's gaze did not move from Lauren. Not even when the patient's oxygen improved. Not even when the bay exhaled. Kerr's eyes flicked to Mako, then back to Lauren's face. Something in her expression tightened. Not surprise. Something closer to confirmation. Lauren finished securing the catheter and stepped back. Only then did she allow herself a single breath that belonged to her. Priya looked at her, a question in her eyes. Lauren shook her head slightly. Not now. Not here. Priya accepted it. Good call, Priya said, voice low enough to be private. Stay with us. Lauren nodded once and moved to the medication cart again, drawing up what the team asked for, handing syringes and saline with crisp economy. She became what she had been pretending to be, a nurse in a bay, full of doctors, except the bay knew better now. The patient's color improved. The blood pressure crept upward. The heart rate slowed. The rhythm became less frantic, more human. Jonah hovered near the foot of the bed, still unsettled. He leaned close to Priya, voice sharp but controlled. She knew what to do without imaging. Priya did not look at him. So did you, she said. You just argued with your own instincts. Jonah's jaw clenched. We cannot have staff freelancing invasive procedures. Priya finally looked at him. We cannot have staff dying because we waited for a scan, she replied. Pick your fear. Jonah had no answer for that. As the team stabilized the patient, the noise level dropped from frantic to focused. The trauma bay became a machine, each person a moving part. Orders went out for imaging, labs, blood gas, consults. The patient was prepped for transfer. Lauren wiped her hands, stripped off gloves, and immediately pulled a new pair on. Her skin felt too tight, as if adrenaline had turned her into something made of wire. Ethan stepped closer, staying just outside Priya's orbit. His voice was low. You did that like you've done it before. Lauren did not look at him. I followed the signs. Ethan's gaze flicked to the patient, then back. Most people freeze when someone's dying. You didn't. Lauren glanced at him once, a look that carried the end of the conversation. "People don't have time for my nerves," she said. Ethan swallowed. "That dog is still locked on you." Lauren's eyes moved to Mako. The dog stood with his weight balanced, ready ears forward, gaze fixed. He was not guarding the patient. He was guarding her or something close to it. Lauren felt the urge to step away from that gaze, the same urge she used to feel when a helicopter spotlight found her in darkness. She did not move. Moving would make the room notice. Not moving let her pretend she belonged. Marisol Vega appeared at the edge of the bay, eyes scanning, phone pressed to her ear. She spoke quietly, then lowered it and looked at Priya. "Limited lockdown is now full lockdown," Marisol said. "Administration is losing their minds. Media is already sniffing around outside." Priya's face stayed hard. "Keep them outside," she said. Marisol's eyes shifted to Kerr and Brody. "They brought their own kind of chaos," she replied. Kerr stepped forward, voice cool. "Chief Vega, we need access to a private room." Marisol's lips pressed together. "For what purpose?" "For her," Brody said, nodding toward Lauren. Lauren did not look at them. She kept her hands busy organizing syringes, checking labels. In her periphery, she could feel the room's attention tilt again. Not toward the patient. Toward her. Priya's voice sharpened. "Not while my patient is unstable." Kerr's gaze did not flicker. "Doctor, this is a federal containment situation." Priya stepped closer, and for a moment, the ICU attending looked like someone who had stood between soldiers and civilians in another life. "This is a hospital," Priya said. "You can contain whatever you want after my staff is done saving lives." Brody's expression did not change, but his eyes tightened. "If that compound is in this building, you will lose more than one patient." Lauren's fingers paused. She looked at Brody, then fully. "You already did," she said quietly. The words landed with weight. Brody's gaze sharpened. Kerr's jaw tightened. Ethan watched Lauren as if the room had turned upside down. "What compound?" he asked. Lauren did not answer him. She did not want to say it in a trauma bay. Names had power. Names were how systems woke up. She kept her voice low. "The kind that doesn't care what your badge says," she replied. Priya's eyes held Lauren's. "Lauren," Priya said softly, "do you think this is still about the dog alerting on you?" Lauren's gaze shifted again to the vents above the bay, the ceiling tiles with their neat pattern, the gentle hum of air moving where nobody looked. "No," Lauren said. "I think the dog found a trail." Mako's ears flicked as if he understood the word. Ethan's voice went tight. "Mako doesn't track in a hospital. He searches." Lauren looked at him. "He tracks when the scent is moving," she said. The trauma patient was rolled toward imaging, stabilized enough to survive the next steps. The team followed, peeling away like a tide shifting to a new shore. As the gurney left the bay, emptied, the adrenaline that had held everyone upright began to thin, leaving behind tremors in hands and the sudden awareness of cramped shoulders. A nurse laughed quietly, the sound too sharp, then covered her mouth. Lauren stepped out of the bay and into the corridor. The hospital felt different. Tight. The usual clutter of movement was gone. Doors were closed. Hallways were watched. Staff moved in small clusters, voices hushed. The overhead announcements were calm in the way a warning label was calm. Ethan stayed at her side. He kept Mako close leash short. Kerr and Brody fell in behind them without asking permission, as if they had decided the corridor belonged to them. Marisol walked ahead, clearing a path, her officers shifting positions as they passed. The hospital was becoming a chessboard, and every piece knew it. They reached a junction where the corridor split toward imaging and toward critical care. Mako stopped. Not a sit this time. A freeze. His nose dipped, then swept a short arc of air. His body angled toward the ICU corridor. Ethan tightened his grip. "Buddy," he whispered. Mako took a single step forward, then another, pulling gently. Ethan's face hardened. "He's getting a hit," he said. Kerr's voice was clipped. "Keep him on leash." Lauren watched the dog's posture, the tension in his shoulders, the focus in his eyes. "He's not searching," she said. "He's following." Brody's gaze cut to Lauren. "How do you know the difference?" Lauren's voice stayed even. "Because I've watched it," she replied. Priya appeared again, moving faster now, phone pressed to her ear. She ended the call mid-stride and looked at Lauren with a physician's version of fear, the kind that had nothing to do with personal danger and everything to do with a patient's body losing a battle. "We have an ICU patient seizing," Priya said. No history, no warning. Jonah caught up behind her, face pale. "It started like dizziness," he said, as if he needed to hear himself say it. Then tremors. Then full seizure. Lauren's chest tightened. The metallic taste that had been faint in the ER felt stronger now, like a penny held under the tongue. Marisol's hand rose to her radio. "ICU corridor is secured," she said. "We can move you through." Kerr's eyes narrowed. "Nobody touches that patient without barriers," she said. Priya's gaze snapped to Kerr. "We touch patients to keep them alive," she replied. Brody's voice was flat. "Then you will do it protected." Lauren stepped forward. "Seal the vents," she said. Priya's eyes locked on her. "Why?" Lauren's gaze went to the ceiling. "Because the air returns," she replied. "It moves where you don't look." Jonah's face tightened. "This is not a chemical event," he said. But his voice lacked conviction now because reality had started agreeing with Lauren. Mako pulled again, harder this time, as if the scent had gained strength. Ethan looked at Lauren and his expression had shifted from suspicion to something else, a reluctant belief built out of too many small proofs. Ethan said low, "Tell me what you are." Lauren did not answer. She did not have time to answer. She moved toward the ICU corridor, hands already reaching for fresh gloves, eyes narrowing as the hospital's quiet deepened into something that felt like a held breath. Behind her, Mako's nails clicked softly on tile as he followed, and the leash in Ethan's hand tightened like a tether to something neither of them could afford to lose. Lauren moved first because hesitation had a sound, and she could already hear it building in the corridor. The ICU doors stood ahead like a threshold into a quieter kind of danger. The air changed as they passed through colder and thinner, washed with disinfectant and the steady mechanical breathing of ventilators. Floor lights glowed low along the baseboards, guiding feet that had walked this hallway in every kind of emergency. Mako pulled once, then steadied nose low. Ethan kept the leash short, his hand wrapped tight enough to leave an imprint in his palm. Priya strode beside Lauren with the clipped focus of someone who could not afford to be wrong. Jonah followed half a step behind, trying to keep his authority from slipping off his shoulders. Marisol and two security officers moved like a closing net, opening doors and sealing them behind. Kerr and Brody trailed with the quiet inevitability of people who were used to arriving after things went bad and calling it procedure. The sound hit them before they reached the room. A monitor screaming in a high, urgent cadence. A nurse calling for help with a voice that kept cracking on the edges. The sharp slap of bare feet on sheets. They turned into the bay and found a young woman seizing hard enough to make the bed frame rattle. Her arms jerked her jaw, clenched saliva foaming at the corner of her mouth. The pulse oximeter had lost its grip. The cardiac monitor showed a jagged mess that threatened to become nothing. Two ICU nurses hovered, torn between restraining and protecting. One held the patient's shoulder with both hands, trying to keep her from throwing herself off the mattress. The other fumbled with a syringe, her gloves trembling. "Name is Tessa Ward," the charge nurse said, voice tight. "Admitted post-op yesterday. No neurohistory, no seizure history." She said she felt dizzy, then her hands tingled, then this. Lauren's eyes swept the room in one fast pass. Bedding, IV lines, vent grates above. The cart by the wall, open drawers, medication vials lined like teeth. The nurse's hands, the way her fingers kept wiping at her own lips. "Metallic taste," the nurse blurted as if embarrassed to say it. "Like I'm sucking on a penny." Lauren stepped closer, staying just outside the arc of the patient's flailing limbs. Her gaze went to Tessa's skin. Pale, not just anxious pale, but waxy. The color of a candle left too close to heat. She looked at the pupils, the breathing, the pattern of the seizure. Her mind ran through causes like a triage sieve, sorting what fit and what did not. Priya was already issuing orders. Lorazepam now. Airway ready. Suction at bedside. Move the crash cart in. Jonah reached for the chart on the wall. "Labs are pending," he said, voice trying for control. "Electrolytes, glucose tox screen." Lauren watched Tessa's chest. It rose shallow, then snagged like her muscles were forgetting the sequence. This isn't primary neuro, Lauren said. Jonah snapped his head toward her. You cannot call that. Lauren did not look at him. Watch her breathing, she replied. Watch her skin. Watch the nurses. The charge nurse stiffened. What about us? Lauren nodded toward the nurse who had mentioned the taste. You feel it too, she said. It was not a question. The nurse swallowed. My throat feels tight. Priya's hands were steady as she guided the medication in, then supported the patient's head. The seizure began to slow, the violent jerks softening into tremors, then into a slack collapse that looked too much like surrender. Tessa's chest still did not rise the way it should have. Bag her, Priya ordered. Now! The respiratory therapist stepped in, sealing the mask. The bag hissed with each squeeze. Tessa's oxygen number climbed, reluctant at first, then steadier. Lauren's gaze went back to the vents. Seal the vents, she said louder now. The charge nurse blinked. We can't. Marisol stepped into the doorway, eyes scanning. We can, she said, and pointed to a security officer. Facilities control. Shut the airflow to this wing. Kerr's head snapped up. Do not change ventilation without containment assessment. Lauren looked at Kerr for the first time in the room. If you wait for a clean assessment, you will be assessing bodies, she said. Kerr's expression did not soften. Watch your tone. Lauren stepped closer, stopping just short of the patient's bedside. Watch your priorities, she replied. Priya glanced between them, then back to the patient. Marisol, she said. Do it. Marisol did not hesitate. Her radio came up. Facilities lock ventilation to ICU wing. Close returns. Cut recirculation. I want external exhaust only if you can route it. A beat of static. Then a voice, wary. Chief, that is not standard. Marisol's reply was calm and final. Neither is a bomb dog in my ICU. Do it. Lauren pulled a fresh pair of gloves from the wall dispenser and snapped them on. The latex popped in the quiet. She leaned in close enough to smell Tessa's breath when the mask lifted between squeezes. Under the hospital's sense was that faint metallic wrongness, again stronger here, threaded through the air like a wire. Ethan stood just inside the bay leash, tight. Mako's nose swept low, then lifted, tasting. His body stayed oriented toward Lauren, but his attention kept drifting, pulled by something that lived beyond this room. Ethan, Lauren said without turning. Your dog is not alerting on me anymore. Ethan's voice came tight. He keeps checking you. He's using me as reference, Lauren replied. I'm the anchor scent. He's comparing the air to what he remembers. Jonah scoffed, once a reflex. This is not how science works. Lauren looked at him then. Her eyes were calm, but there was nothing gentle in them. It is how dogs work, she said. And dogs notice what you ignore. Priya's gaze cut to Jonah. Stop filling the room with noise, she said quietly. Jonah's jaw tightened, but he went still. Tessa's breathing improved under the bag. The tremors faded. Her eyes rolled back, then settled unfocused, but no longer fighting her own body. The monitor steadied into a rhythm that felt human again. The charge nurse exhaled like she had been underwater. She's coming back, she whispered. Lauren did not relax. Her eyes remained on the vents, then on the nurses, then on the door. This is exposure, she said. Kerr's posture went rigid. To what? Lauren did not answer immediately. Not because she did not know, but because saying it would make it real in a way that demanded consequences. Brody stepped forward, voice flat. If you know you say it. Lauren met his gaze. It moves on surfaces, she said. It binds low. Not airborne like chlorine, not heavy like smoke. It rides fabric. It rides skin. It sits in places you do not think to clean. Kerr's eyes narrowed. That profile is not a civilian threat. Lauren's lips pressed together. You are saying that like it makes anyone safer. Ethan's grip tightened on the leash. Lauren, he said low. Where did you learn this? Lauren's eyes flicked to Mako. The dog watched her hands, then glanced toward the corridor again. His ears lifted as if he heard something the humans could not. Not here, she said. Priya's voice was steady, grounded in her role. We can debate your background later, she said. Right now, I need protocol. How do we keep this wing from becoming a chain reaction? Lauren nodded once. The movement was small, but it carried a shift. She stepped into the space that leadership occupied without asking permission. Barrier, everything Lauren said. No bare hands, no exposed skin. Double glove if you have it. Gowns for anyone entering rooms. Masks for anyone within 6 feet of patients. Treat curtains like they are contaminated. Treat bed rails like they are contaminated. Treat your own scrubs like they are contaminated. The charge nurse swallowed. We do not have that kind of PPE inventory. Marisol stepped closer, voice low. We can lock down central supply. Lauren's gaze snapped toward the corridor. Not locked down, she corrected. Control. Clean hands in. Dirty hands out. One-way flow. Brody's eyes narrowed. You are speaking like you have run containment. Lauren held his gaze. I have, she said. Kerr's phone buzzed in her hand, and she glanced at it once. The screen lit her face in a cold blue. Something in her expression hardened. Chief Vega Kerr said, and the way she said the name carried authority that did not belong in a hospital. I need a private room. Now. Marisol's eyes narrowed. People are actively crashing. Kerr's gaze did not move from Lauren, and she is actively flagged. Priya stepped in front of Lauren by half an inch, a protective gesture that looked like routine, but was not. You can interrogate after my patients are stable, Priya said. Brody answered, voice flat. This is not interrogation. This is containment. Lauren's eyes stayed on Tessa, who lay slack now, breathing shallow but steady, the mask hissing softly. Lauren watched the young woman's fingers pale and still and felt something tighten in her chest that had nothing to do with adrenaline. Kerr stepped closer. Lauren Hayes, she said. You are coming with us. Lauren did not look at her. No, she replied. Kerr's jaw tightened. You do not get to choose. Lauren turned slowly, meeting Kerr's eyes. In a hospital, she said, everyone chooses. We choose who gets the bed. We choose who gets the oxygen. We choose who we touch first. You are not removing me from a wing that is actively being poisoned. The word poisoned landed in the room like a dropped instrument. Priya's gaze flicked to Lauren, then back to Kerr. If you have evidence of a toxin, Priya said you share it now. Brody's eyes stayed on Lauren. We have evidence of a signature, he said. And she matches it. Lauren's expression did not change. That is your problem, she replied. Not theirs. Miko shifted at Ethan's side. He took one step toward the door, nose low, then paused, looking back at Lauren. Ethan watched him conflicted. He wants to move, he murmured. Lauren's eyes flicked to the dog. Let him, she said. Kerr snapped number. Lauren's gaze stayed calm. Your agents are here because the system lit up, she said. If you want to stop the system from lighting up more, you follow the dog. Brody's expression tightened. You are not in command. Lauren looked at him without warmth. Then act like it, she said. Command is responsibility. This wing is bleeding in slow motion. A nurse in the hallway shouted, voice ragged. Another patient is shaking. Priya turned, already moving. The charge nurse followed, barking orders to her staff to mask up, glove up, keep doors closed. The ICU became a hive of controlled chaos. It did not look like panic. It looked like people running on training while fear tried to climb their throats. Kerr stood for a beat, caught between procedure and reality. Brody's gaze flicked down the corridor where staff were moving in and out of rooms. Then back to Lauren. Private room, he repeated. Lauren held his gaze. Pick one, she said. You want me contained or you want me useful? Marisol stepped in, voice low. There is a consult room 2 doors down, she said. Glass walls, secure lock. You can have your conversation there, but the nurse stays within this wing. Kerr's eyes narrowed. She comes with us. Marisol's reply was calm and cold. She comes with me, she said. This is still my facility. Kerr studied her, then nodded once the smallest concession. Fine, she said. But she does not leave our sight. Lauren moved toward the consult room without rushing, because rushing would make her look guilty, and guilt was an invitation. Ethan followed, leash in hand. Mako stayed close to Lauren's leg, as if he had decided where he belonged. They entered a small room with a table bolted to the floor, 2 chairs, a wall-mounted screen that nobody used, and glass walls that made privacy feel like a performance. Marisol closed the door behind them. A security officer stood outside, visible through the glass. Priya did not come. She stayed with her patients. That choice, that refusal to leave, made Lauren's throat tighten more than she expected. Kerr stood across from Lauren, hands empty posture, controlled. Brody leaned against the wall with his arms crossed, gaze steady. Ethan stood near the door, Mako at his side. Lauren sat in one of the chairs because standing would look like a challenge, and she did not have time for challenges. Mako sat at her feet, calm but alert. Kerr placed a phone on the table screen facing up. It displayed a grid of data that meant nothing to the hospital staff, but everything to the people in the room. "You tripped a dormant escalation," Kerr said. Lauren's eyes flicked to the screen, then back. "I did not trip anything," she replied. "Your dog did." Brody's voice was flat. "Your biometric profile matches a sealed identifier." Lauren's expression stayed calm. "Impressive," she said. "Considering I do not exist." Ethan's head snapped toward her. "What does that mean?" Lauren looked at him, and for a second her mask softened. "It means my paperwork is clean," she said. Kerr did not blink. "Your name appears 5 years ago," she said. "Nursing school, a license, a clean background check. Before that, there is nothing. No childhood records, no employment, no medical history, no tax footprint, nothing." Lauren's gaze stayed steady. "Some people move," she said. Brody's eyes narrowed. "People move with records," he replied. Lauren leaned back slightly in the chair, not relaxed, just measured. "Then you should be more suspicious of the people who have too many," she said. Kerr's voice hardened. "This is not banter." Lauren's eyes cooled. "Then stop treating it like a confession," she replied. Ethan looked between them, his face tight with confusion. "Federal auto notification," he said. "From a dog alert." "How does that even happen?" Brody answered without looking at Ethan. "Certain compound signatures are tied to historical operations," he said. "If a certified detection K9 registers them in a civilian setting, the system escalates." Ethan's voice cracked with disbelief. "That system is supposed to be dead." Kerr's eyes stayed on Lauren. "It was sleeping," she said. "Until tonight." Lauren did not respond. She did not give them the satisfaction of a flinch. Brody's voice cut in sharper. "You were declared killed in action," he said. "Classified theater. Classified unit. Declared no survivors." Ethan went still. His hand tightened on the leash. "No," he breathed as if he could deny the words into non-existence. Lauren's gaze did not move from Brody. "Declared," she echoed. "Interesting word." Kerr's phone vibrated again. She ignored it. Her eyes remained fixed on Lauren. "You were not supposed to survive," Kerr said. Lauren held her gaze. "And yet your patients are still breathing," she replied. "Would you like to discuss gratitude, or do you want to keep reading files?" Brody's eyes hardened. "This is not about heroics," he said. "This is about containment and liability." Lauren's lips pressed together. "People are seizing in the ICU," she said. "Your liability is walking down the hall in scrubs." Ethan's head snapped up. "What compound?" he demanded. "What is in this building?" Lauren's gaze shifted to Ethan. Her voice softened slightly, not kinder, but more human. "It is not something you use for bombs," she said. "It is something you use for bodies." Ethan swallowed. "Chemical," he said. Lauren nodded once. Kerr's jaw tightened. "That compound was never approved for deployment," she said. Lauren's eyes cooled. "Neither was the mission," she replied. Brody's phone buzzed. He glanced down, and for the first time, his expression shifted, a flicker of concern breaking the smooth mask. "What?" Kerr demanded. Brody's gaze lifted. "Second symptomatic patient," he said. "Tremors. Confusion. Another seizure pending." Lauren's chest tightened. "You are wasting time," she said, and pushed her chair back. Kerr's hand lifted. "Sit down." Lauren looked at her with quiet contempt. "Dr. Nandakumar is in there," she said. "If she loses a patient because you wanted a conversation, you will carry that." Kerr's eyes narrowed. "You think guilt works on us?" Lauren's voice stayed calm. "It should," she replied. Then she opened the door. Marisol stepped aside without question. Ethan followed Mako, rising in sync with Lauren's movement body, aligned like a shadow. They moved back into the corridor. The ICU felt tighter now, quieter in a way that was wrong. Staff wore masks. Some wore gowns. Others had improvised barriers with plastic ponchos from supply bins. A nurse taped garbage bags around her sleeves with shaking fingers. Priya met them halfway down the hall. Her face was composed, but her eyes were sharp with controlled anger. "We have 2 more," she said. Both with the same pattern. Dizziness, metallic taste, tremors. "I have 1 escalating." Lauren nodded. "It is spreading," she said. Kerr's eyes narrowed. "Or it is being carried," she said. Lauren looked at her. "Either way, it is inside," she replied. Mako pulled gently again, nose low, body angled down the corridor away from patient rooms. Not toward the ICU entrance, not toward the nurses' station, but toward the service hallway that led to storage and supply. Ethan felt it. "He is tracking," he said. Kerr stepped toward them. "Leash stays short," she ordered. Lauren watched the dog's posture. "He is not breaking command," she said. "He is obeying the strongest one he has." Ethan's eyes flicked to her, pained. "I am his handler." Lauren met his gaze. "You are his leash," she replied. "There is a difference." Ethan's jaw tightened, but he did not argue. He let Mako lead, controlled, steady. Marisol moved ahead, flashing her badge at a secure door. A keypad beeped. The lock clicked. They entered a service corridor where the lights were dimmer and the air smelled of dust and cardboard, a place the public never saw. The hospital behind them hummed with life and fear. This corridor felt like the underside of a ship where things moved unseen. Mako's nose traced along the base of the wall, then lifted to a set of double doors marked Central Supply Authorized Personnel Only. He stopped. He sat. Hard. Ethan's throat tightened. "He is saying it is here," he murmured. Marisol looked at the door. "Supply was cleared," she said. Lauren's voice was quiet. "Cleared is not clean," she replied. Marisol signaled to a security officer. "Open it," she said. The officer keyed in a code. The lock clicked. The door cracked open. The smell came first. It was faint, but wrong. Metallic chemical like a battery leaking. Not strong enough to make the eyes water. Strong enough to make the body remember something it never wanted to learn. Lauren's shoulders tightened. She could feel it in her throat, a subtle dryness that made swallowing too noticeable. They entered. The supply room was larger than a classroom. Shelves stacked to the ceiling with boxed gloves, syringes, tubing gowns, sterile kits, everything a hospital burned through like oxygen. The fluorescent lights flickered slightly as if the room itself was nervous. Mako moved 2 steps in nose sweeping low, then he cut left straight to a pallet near the back. A crate sat there, broken open. Foam padding lay torn, its clean geometry shredded by force. Inside the crate were empty slots where vials should have been. Not many, but enough. Lauren crouched, careful not to touch anything. She studied the edges of the foam, the pattern of the tear. "These were removed," she said. Brody's voice was flat. "You can tell." Lauren did not look up. "They did not want a spill," she replied. "They wanted control." Kerr stepped closer, eyes scanning the crate. "This is not hospital inventory," she said. Marisol's face tightened. "Then how did it get here?" Lauren's gaze lifted to the ceiling. A vent. A return duct. A place air traveled and nobody looked. "They moved it through the back," Lauren said. Ethan swallowed. "Who?" Lauren's eyes dropped back to the empty foam slots. "Someone who knows how hospitals work," she replied. Kerr's hand went to her phone. "We need full inventory chain of custody," she said. "We need facility access logs." Marisol's voice was tight. "My facility logs are internal." Brody looked at Marisol. "Not anymore," he said. Marisol's eyes flashed, but she said nothing. Mako growled low, not at a person, but at the air near the crate. His hackles rose slightly, then settled. Ethan crouched beside him. "Easy," he whispered. Lauren watched the dog's reaction. "He is not angry," she said. "He is warning." Kerr's eyes narrowed. "Warning about what?" Lauren rose slowly. She kept her hands visible, palms empty. This was not an accident, she said. This was a placement. Brody's gaze sharpened. A placement for what purpose? Lauren's voice stayed calm. A signal, she said. Marisol frowned. A signal to who? Lauren met Marisol's gaze. To anyone listening for me, she replied. The words hung in the air, heavy and precise. Even Ethan stopped breathing for a beat. Brody's expression tightened. You are saying they used this to flush you out. Lauren did not deny it. She looked back at the crate. They did not need to release all of it, she said. They needed enough to make your dog confirm what he remembered. Enough to wake your protocols. Kerr's jaw clenched. You are assuming intent. Lauren's eyes went cold. You are assuming safety, she replied. A radio crackled in Marisol's hand. Her officer's voice came through tight with urgency. Chief, we have a problem at the ambulance bay. Unknown vehicle. Unauthorized entry attempt. Marisol's posture snapped taut. Lock it down, she said. Now. Ethan looked at Lauren. His face had shifted from suspicion into something harsher, something like dread. They are here, he said. Lauren's gaze stayed on the open crate. She could taste metal at the back of her tongue. Kerr's eyes cut to Brody. Move, she said. Brody's hand lifted a small signal. Contain supply, he ordered into his phone. No one enters without barriers. Sweep for additional crates. Marisol turned toward the door. My officers will handle the bay, she said. Lauren stepped forward, voice low but firm. Not alone, she said. Marisol glanced back at her. You are a nurse. Lauren met her gaze. That is why I do not get to freeze, she replied. Mako stood pulling once more toward the exit, ears forward, body coiled. Ethan tightened the leash, ready to move with him. They left the supply room behind the broken crate, still gaping like a mouth that had just spoken. The service corridor swallowed them in dim light, and the hospital's hum felt louder now, as if the building itself had begun to realize what was moving through its walls. They moved fast, but the hospital still felt slow, as if the building itself resisted the idea that violence could fit inside it. Lauren led through the service corridor and back into the main spine of the facility, where white walls and polished floors tried to pretend this was only medicine. The doors between zones clicked and sealed behind them. Somewhere overhead, ventilation fans changed pitch as facilities obeyed Marisol's order, cutting recirculation to the ICU wing. The air turned heavier, less forgiving. It carried the faint metallic wrongness like a secret nobody wanted to admit they could taste. Ethan kept Mako close. The dog's paws made almost no sound, nails muted against tile, but his posture spoke loudly. Nose low, shoulders tight, eyes alive. He was not searching anymore. He was moving with direction. Marisol's radio crackled again, sharper now. Ambulance bay breach confirmed. Unknown vehicle at the ramp. 2 subjects attempted access through the side doors. Security is holding, but they're not leaving. Kerr's jaw clenched. Lock the bay doors. Marisol's reply came flat. Already done. Brody's gaze swept the corridor intersections, measuring angles. They want movement, he said. They want people pulled away from containment. Lauren did not slow. They already got what they came for, she said. Ethan looked at her. What? Lauren's eyes flicked to Mako. A confirmation, she replied. A scent that wakes old alarms. A reason for you to call them. Kerr stepped up beside Lauren, voice low. You are going to tell me what you are. Lauren kept walking. I am the nurse on duty, she said. Kerr's voice hardened. Stop. Lauren stopped. Not because Kerr asked, but because the hallway ahead opened into a wider atrium where sound traveled. A cluster of staff stood near a nurse's station, masked and wide-eyed, whispering over their phones. A patient in a wheelchair stared toward the far doors where security had posted themselves like a wall. Lauren turned toward Kerr, just enough to keep the conversation contained. You want a name? She said. Names are what you use to drag someone into a file and pretend you understand them. Brody's eyes narrowed. We do not need your philosophy. Lauren's gaze did not move. Then stop acting like you need my confession to do your job, she replied. Kerr's expression tightened, but she let it pass because another alarm chirped down the hall. Not loud, not a code, just a monitor warning that something was slipping. Priya's voice came through Marisol's radio, tense but controlled. I have a second patient with tremors. If anyone is moving through ICU corridors, I need barriers. Nobody touches without double gloves. Double. Lauren felt the words hit her like a weight. She had chosen the wrong place to exist. Hospitals did not forgive mistakes. They collected them. Ethan glanced toward the ICU wing torn. We should be in there, he said. Lauren shook her head once. Your dog is telling you where the source is, she replied. If you do not stop the source, Priya will be bagging patients until her hands give out. Mako pulled gentle but insistent angling toward the ambulance bay. Marisol raised a hand, signaling her officers forward. Clear the hallway, she said. Keep staff behind doors. They advanced with the quiet urgency of people who had accepted that the worst thing had already happened. The closer they got to the ambulance bay, the more the air smelled like diesel and cold concrete. The overhead lights flickered once, then steadied the building, struggling to keep its face. The bay doors were partially down, metal teeth lowered to a defensive position. On the other side of the glass, headlights flared against the concrete ramp, bright enough to turn figures into silhouettes. An unmarked SUV idled near the curb, engine low, patient as if it belonged there. Its rear doors were open. Two people stood in the wash of the headlights, masked, dressed in dark clothing that could pass for staff from a distance. Not tactical armor, not police, not sloppy. Either. They were waiting. Security officers held their line inside the bay, weapons drawn, but pointed low, tension in their shoulders like coiled springs. A paramedic stood frozen beside an empty stretcher, mouth slightly open, unsure if today had become a war. Lauren stepped into the threshold where the glass doors met the bay. The air was colder, here wet with winter. Mako's body went rigid. Ethan tightened the leash. Hold, he whispered. The nearer masked figure turned his head slowly, as if he had heard Lauren's breath. His gaze landed on her, and even through the mask, Lauren felt the recognition snap into place. It was not surprise. It was confirmation. The figure lifted one hand, palm out, a gesture that looked like peace until you understood how controlled it was. You're supposed to be dead? A voice said. Male. Calm. Familiar in a way that made Lauren's spine tighten. Lauren did not step forward. She did not step back. Her voice came out even. So are you? A pause thin as wire. The second masked figure shifted his weight toward the open SUV, as if ready to move. His head kept turning, scanning the bay, measuring responses. Kerr stepped to Lauren's side, one hand near her own weapon, but not drawn. Her voice cut through the cold. Federal agents. Step back from the vehicle. Hands where I can see them. The first figure did not flinch. He kept his hand raised still, like he was negotiating with someone else entirely. We are not here for you, he said, eyes fixed on Lauren. We are here to clean up a mistake. Lauren's eyes stayed on him. You do not clean mistakes, she replied. You bury them. The man's gaze narrowed slightly, as if she had struck something personal. You should have stayed buried, he said. Lauren felt the metallic taste deepen in her mouth. You should not have brought it into a hospital, she answered. Behind the glass, Mako gave a low growl that vibrated through the leash. Ethan's knuckles whitened. Marisol's voice was sharp, carrying. Back away from the doors. Now. Final warning. The second figure moved fast. He turned and ran toward the SUV, reaching into the rear like he was grabbing something long. Brody's weapon came up smooth. Do not, he said. The runner froze for half a second, then kept moving. Lauren's voice snapped low and hard. Stop. It was not loud. It did not need to be. Something in it made Ethan glance at her, like he had just heard a command he recognized but could not place. The runner hesitated, and in that hesitation, Lauren saw it clearly. Not amateurs. They expected compliance. They expected extraction, not resistance. The first figure kept his eyes on Lauren. You remember, he said softly. Lauren's chest tightened. I remember everything, she replied. That is the problem. Kerr shifted her stance, ready. Last chance. On the ground. Hands behind your head. The first figure's shoulders rose slightly, a small breath. Too late, he said. Then his gaze flicked past Lauren's shoulder toward the interior of the hospital. And Lauren understood what he meant. This was not the main move. This was the distraction. A shrill alarm sounded from deep inside the building, higher pitched than the lockdown tone. An ICU monitor alarm, the kind that made your skin prickle even if you had never seen one. Marisol's radio erupted with voices. ICU bed 7 is coding. We need help now. Respiratory is tied up. Dr. Nandakumar is asking for an extra set of hands. Priya's voice came through, clipped, strained by speed. Now. I need hands now. Lauren's body moved before her mind finished deciding. She turned from the bay toward the corridor, already pulling gloves from a wall dispenser as she ran. Kerr stepped into her path. No. Lauren's eyes met hers. People are dying, she said. Kerr's jaw tightened. And they are here for you. Lauren's voice went flat. Then you should have stopped them before they reached my hospital, she replied. Marisol did not hesitate. She grabbed Kerr's sleeve and pulled her half a step back. Let her work, Marisol said. If you want her contained, contain her after she keeps my patients breathing. Ethan shifted torn leash tight. Mako strained toward Lauren's movement, then angled toward the corridor, too caught between the scent outside and the person inside. Lauren glanced down at the dog. Stay, she said quietly. Mako's ears flicked. He did not sit. He did not lie down. He stood vibrating with purpose. Ethan swallowed. He will not leave you, he murmured. Lauren did not argue. She turned and ran. The hospital corridors swallowed her in fluorescent light and muted sound. Doors were shut, staff tucked away, the building holding its breath. Lauren's footsteps were the loudest thing for a moment. She hit the ICU entrance and pushed through. Bed 7 was chaos. A patient lay gray-skinned lips, pale eyes unfocused. The monitor above him showed a rhythm that was flirting with silence. A nurse was already at the bedside, pressing on the chest with compressions that looked too fast and too shallow, because fear always tried to speed you up. Priya stood at the head of the bed, mask on, hair-tucked, eyes fierce. Switch, she barked when she saw Lauren. Lauren moved into position, hands finding the center of the sternum without thinking. She began compressions with a rhythm that was steady enough to anchor everyone in the room. Her shoulders did not rise. Her elbows stayed locked. Her breathing stayed controlled. Bag, Priya ordered. Slow. Seal. A respiratory therapist squeezed the bag valve mask, each breath measured. The patient's chest rose, reluctant, then fell. Jonah appeared at the doorway, face tight. He looked at Lauren's hands and said nothing because there was nothing to say that would make him useful. Lauren's voice was calm as she counted under her breath, numbers marking time. The room moved around her, drawing up meds, checking lines, swapping out equipment. The smell of sweat and disinfectant mixed with the faint metallic wrongness that seemed to cling to everything. Mako appeared in the doorway. Ethan followed, leash in hand, breath quick from running. I tried to keep him out, Ethan said, voice strained. He would not stay. Priya glanced at the dog once, then snapped back to the patient. As long as he does not touch anything, I do not care, she said. Mako stayed near Lauren's leg body, angled toward the hall, eyes flicking between Lauren's hands and the corridor. He was guarding her while she crushed a stranger's ribs back into life. The monitor flatlined. A single long tone cut through the room. For a fraction of a second, the world narrowed to the sound. Lauren did not stop. She pushed harder, steady, refusing to let her rhythm break. Epi, Priya ordered. A syringe appeared. Priya pushed it. Again, she said, voice low. Lauren felt the burn in her arms and ignored it. Burn meant time. Time meant possible. The monitor flickered. A jagged line crawled back onto the screen. Not stable, not safe, but alive. The patient's chest hitched. A thin gasp tore through his throat like the first breath after drowning. The room exhaled in unison. Lauren stepped back, sweat cooling on her spine, and only then did her hands tremble slightly as adrenaline pulled away and left reality behind. Priya's gaze snapped to Lauren. Barriers, she said, pointing. You do not touch your face. You do not touch anything else without changing gloves. Do you understand? Lauren nodded once. I isolate, she replied. Priya's eyes narrowed. You know this protocol. Lauren did not answer. Kerr appeared in the doorway, breath-controlled weapon still holstered, but her posture tight. They activated retrieval, she said. Lauren looked at her eyes steady. They do not get to retrieve what they abandoned, she replied. Kerr's voice went colder. If you do not come voluntarily, they will send someone else. Lauren's mouth tightened into something that was almost a smile, but there was no humor in it. They always do, she said. Mako's head lifted sharply. His ears angled toward the corridor. His hackles rose a wave running along his spine. Lauren felt it too, a pressure in the air that did not belong to hospital stress. A presence that moved with intention. Footsteps echoed down the ICU hallway, heavy, unhurried. Not the frantic sprint of staff. Not the cautious shuffle of security. A man stepped into view under the fluorescent lights. He wore scrubs like everyone else. Blue-top hospital badge, clipped stethoscope draped around his neck. From a distance, he could have been any doctor or nurse. Up close, he was wrong. His posture was too calm. His shoulders were too squared. His gaze held the kind of stillness that came from years of deciding who lived and who did not. Lauren's pulse slowed, a strange calm settling over her as recognition clicked into place like a weapon being chambered. The man smiled, gentle enough to be mistaken for kind. "Lauren," he said, "it has been a long time." Kerr's eyes flicked toward Brody, confusion tightening her face. "Who is that?" she whispered. Lauren did not take her eyes off him. "Someone who should have stayed buried," she said. The man's smile widened slightly. "We need to talk." Mako growled low and warning, the sound rolling out of him like a storm building under the floor. The man glanced at the dog, then back to Lauren. "You always did bring friends," he said. Security officers began to close in behind Kerr, weapons drawn now, uncertain but ready. The man did not react. He did not tense. He did not shift. "Stand down," he said calmly. His voice was not loud. It carried anyway. A strange thing happened. Some of the officers did hesitate, a half-beat of uncertainty, as if their bodies had responded before their minds did. Authority could be a tone. Predators knew how to use it. Lauren stepped forward, placing herself between the man and the patient rooms. "You are not taking anyone else tonight," she said. The man studied her for a moment, and something like regret flickered across his face, gone before it could become real. "You could have disappeared quietly," he said. "You almost did." Lauren's eyes stayed hard. "I tried," she replied. "People kept needing help." Kerr moved forward, weapon now raised. "Federal agents," she snapped. "On the ground." The man chuckled once, soft. "If I wanted this loud, he said it would already be over." Lauren felt the truth of it settle in her chest, heavy and cold. She turned her head slightly, keeping her eyes on him. "Why now?" she asked. "Because you made noise," he replied. "And because the system does not like loose ends." Lauren nodded slowly. "Then you should not have let me live," she said. The man's smile faded. "We are correcting that," he answered. The lights flickered. Not all at once. Not a clean blackout. A rolling failure that moved down the ICU corridor like a wave. Fluorescent panels dimmed, stuttered, died. Monitors went dark, then switched to battery mode with frantic chirps. Ventilators clicked, their backup systems kicking in. Floor-level emergency lights glowed red, painting faces in a color that made fear look permanent. Kerr slapped at her radio. Static answered. Marisol's voice came through faintly for a second, then vanished into noise. "We lost comms," a security officer said, voice tight. The man in scrubs looked almost amused. "Old buildings," he said mildly. "Overloaded systems." Lauren's voice cut through. "You cut it from the inside," she said. He did not deny it. He did not need to. His calm was confession. "Containment works better without witnesses," he said. A monitor alarm screamed from one of the rooms. Battery failing. Rhythm unstable. Priya turned toward the sound immediately, but Lauren was already moving. She slipped past Kerr's hands, finding a manual bag, swapping to backup without waiting for permission. Her voice stayed steady as she called instructions. Slow breaths. Keep the seal. Watch his color. Do not touch your face. Staff obeyed, because in the dark, the only thing worse than fear was silence. Behind Lauren, Mako barked once, sharp, decisive, then lunged past the man in scrubs toward the supply door at the end of the corridor. Lauren's head snapped up. "He is not the only one," she said. The supply door burst open. Two figures rushed in masked movements, efficient and silent. Not firearms. Injector rigs. Compact delivery systems meant for speed and proximity, meant to put something into a body before anyone understood they were under attack. "Move," Lauren shouted. The first intruder raised his injector toward a nurse who froze in the red light. Mako hit him like a missile. The dog's body slammed into the attacker's torso, driving him back hard into the wall. The injector clattered and skidded across the floor. The attacker grunted, breath knocked out, and Mako pinned him with teeth on fabric, controlled, not ripping, just holding, buying seconds. The second intruder pivoted, fast injector up, aiming for Lauren. Lauren closed the distance in 3 strides. Her left hand caught the wrist. Her right hand locked the elbow. She turned her hips and redirected the force like she was moving a gurney, not fighting a human. The injector tore free and spun away across the floor. The second intruder staggered, surprised, and surprise was expensive. Lauren drove him down with a controlled sweep that put his shoulder to tile. She dropped her knee onto his upper back weight, precise, not enough to crush, enough to own the moment. "Hands," she ordered. He did not comply. Lauren twisted his arm just enough. He hissed, then complied. Security flooded in from both ends of the corridor, weapons, up, voices shouting into dead radios that answered only with static. They grabbed the intruders, cuffing them with plastic ties, pinning their shoulders, forcing their masks back enough to show faces slick with sweat. One of the intruders spat blood and laughed. "Too late," he rasped. "You cannot stop what is already started." Lauren leaned closer, eyes cold. "Watch me," she said. She rose and turned, scanning the corridor. The man in scrubs had not moved during the fight. He watched like a teacher, observing a lesson. His calm was the worst thing in the room. Kerr stepped toward him, weapon trained. On the ground, she ordered again. He lifted his hands slowly, palms out. Not surrender. Mockery. "You think you can bury this again?" he said softly. Lauren's gaze met his. "No," she replied. "I think you cannot." The emergency lights hummed. Monitors beeped on battery. The hospital breathed in short, shallow pulls, trying not to panic. Mako returned to Lauren's side chest, heaving eyes bright. Lauren rested a hand on his head, fingers pressing into fur, grounding both of them. The dog's body stayed tense, ready. Priya moved down the corridor, mask tight, eyes fierce. "Get me light," she snapped. "Get me power. My patients do not have time for your covert games." The man in scrubs tilted his head. "They never do," he said. Marisol appeared through the darkness, face set. She carried a heavy flashlight beam, cutting through red glow. Her officers moved behind her with purpose, their hesitation burned away. She took in the scene in one pass. The intruders on the floor. The injector rigs. The man in scrubs with his hands up. Lauren standing in front of patient rooms like a wall. Marisol's voice was low. "You," she said to the man. "You do not belong here." He smiled faintly. "Neither does she," he replied, nodding toward Lauren. Marisol's beam shifted to Lauren's face. Later, Marisol said, "And it was not a promise, it was triage." Kerr's phone glowed in her hand as she tapped, then lifted it to her ear. No signal. She pulled a smaller device from her pocket, one that did not rely on hospital infrastructure. She spoke into it with clipped precision. "Containment breach neutralized. ICU corridor compromised. Initiate full scrub. Bring external comms. Bring decon." Brody's voice came from the dark behind her. "Power will return in stages," he said, as if he had already been told. Lauren's eyes stayed on the man in scrubs. "You brought them," she said. He shrugged slightly. "Redundancy," he replied. One of the intruders laughed again, then coughed, the sound wet. "You cannot stop the dose," he said. "It is already guided." Lauren's gaze snapped to him. Guided by who, she asked. He bared his teeth in a grin. "Not by me." Mako growled low, reacting to the tone more than the words. Lauren felt the pressure behind her ribs again, the old sense of being bracketed by something you could not see. The man in scrubs stood too calm, too comfortable. Then from somewhere deep in the building, a relay clicked. Lights flickered. Not fully, not bright, but enough to shift the corridor from red shadows into sickly half-light. Monitors chirped as they regained connection. Ventilators steadied. The hospital exhaled a little less shallow. Marisol's flashlight beam tightened on the man in scrubs. "On your knees," she ordered. This time he did. Slowly, deliberately, still smiling. As security moved in to cuff him, he leaned his head slightly toward Lauren, voice low enough to cut through the noise without being overheard by everyone. "They will keep coming," he said. Lauren's expression did not change. "I know," she replied. He glanced at Mako. "You will not always have the dog," he said. Lauren looked down at Mako, then back up. "I will not always need him," she replied. For the first time, something in his face tightened. Not fear, calculation. He realized she meant it. Security hauled him to his feet. In the newly returning light, the ICU corridor looked wrecked in small ways. A supply cart tipped on its side, a mask torn, a line of tape half peeled from a door. A place meant for healing scarred by intent. Priya stepped back into Bed 7's room, hands moving, voice steady, reclaiming medicine from chaos. Staff followed her lead because medicine was the only thing in this building that could not wait. Lauren stood in the corridor for a beat, breathing slow, feeling the tremor in her hands fade as purpose took over again. She pulled her gloves off, carefully, turned them inside out, discarded them in a biohazard bin, and snapped on new ones without looking away from the patient doors. Mako sat at her feet, body aligned with hers, eyes tracking the hallway in case the darkness tried to return. And for the first time since the ER, the hospital felt like it might survive the night, not because it was safe, but because it was being fought for. The lights came back the way a shaken person finds their breath in uneven pulls that steadied only after the panic passed. Panels overhead flickered, failed, then held. The ICU monitors relit one by one, their beeps returning to a normal cadence that sounded almost polite after the night they had survived. Ventilators settled into the familiar hush of assisted breathing. The corridor remained crowded with people who had no business being in an ICU, but nobody moved to complain. They were too busy realizing they were still alive. Marisol's officers dragged the intruders down the hall, boots, scuffing tile plastic cuffs, cutting into wrists that had been confident minutes ago. The injector rigs lay bagged in evidence pouches on a rolling cart, handled with double gloves and the kind of careful distance usually reserved for loaded firearms. Even Ethan kept Mako back from them, leash-tight, voice low, as if the gear could still bite. Lauren stood outside Bed 7, shoulders squared, hands newly gloved, gaze fixed on the doors. She listened to the hospital in the same way she listened to a patient's breathing, picking up the small cues that said whether it was stabilizing or preparing to collapse again. Somewhere down the wing, a staff member cried once, quickly muffled, embarrassed by the sound. A nurse laughed softly and then went silent, as if laughter had become inappropriate in a building that had almost died. Priya pushed out of Bed 7's room with a strip of tape stuck to her glove, and sweat darkening the collar of her scrubs. Her eyes met Lauren's, and for a moment, the doctor looked exactly like what she was, a person trying to hold a line with only her hands. "Vitals are holding," Priya said. Lauren nodded once. The relief that tried to rise in her chest stayed contained, compressed behind ribs that had learned not to celebrate too early. "Two more are borderline," Priya added. "We need isolation rooms. We need barriers that actually work." Marisol's voice cut in steady. "Decon teams are on site. We are converting the step-down wing into a dirty zone. One-way traffic only." Kerr stood a few feet away, speaking into the satellite device she had used when the hospital's comms died. Her tone was clipped, precise, devoid of emotion in the way of people trained to keep emotion from interfering with directives. "Begin full scrub," Kerr said. "We need surface mapping. We need ventilation analysis. We need access logs now, not later." Brody moved down the corridor like a shadow, checking doorways, speaking to no one, absorbing everything. His eyes took inventory of faces and badges and where people stood. He was not looking for sympathy. He was looking for the next breach. Ethan knelt beside Mako, fingers resting on the dog's collar. Mako's ears remained up, tracking the hallway, but his body had lowered slightly now, the tight coil in his shoulders easing as if he finally believed the immediate threat had passed. Lauren stepped closer and let her hand rest on Mako's head for a beat. Not a pat, not comfort. A grounding pressure that communicated the same thing as her voice. Stay with me. Ethan watched her. He looked like he wanted to speak and feared what the answer might be. You were right, he said finally. Lauren did not look up. About what? About the dog, Ethan replied. About the system. About all of it. His throat worked. He recognized you. Lauren's fingers remained in the fur at Mako's crown, steadying. He recognized what he was trained to recognize, she said. Ethan shook his head once. No, he said. That is not just training. He stayed on you. He kept checking you like he was making sure you were real. Lauren lifted her gaze to Ethan's face. The fluorescent light made the exhaustion under his eyes look bruised. He did his job, she said. Ethan's voice tightened. So did you. He swallowed. And you did not do it like a rookie nurse. Lauren's expression stayed neutral, but her jaw tightened by a fraction. This is a hospital, she said. That is what I am here to be. Ethan's eyes did not leave hers. Then why did a retrieval team come through an ambulance bay for you, he asked. Why did a man in scrubs shut off power like he owned the building? Lauren's gaze shifted past him to the corridor where staff moved behind masks and plastic gowns. Because some people do not leave loose ends, she replied. Ethan's voice lowered. And you are a loose end. Lauren's eyes returned to him. I am a nurse, she said again, softer this time, as if saying it could make it true enough to protect everyone around her. Marisol strode up her flashlight still in her hand, even though the lights had returned. Old habits stayed alive for a reason. She looked from Ethan to Lauren to Mako and made a decision without announcing it. Cole Marisol said, voice firm. You and your dog stay in this corridor. You do not enter patient rooms. You do not touch anything without barriers. If your dog needs water, we bring it. If he needs to relieve, we escort him to a controlled area. Ethan nodded. Yes, ma'am. Marisol looked at Lauren. You are with Priya, she said. Lauren did not argue. She moved when given an assignment that served patients. It was the easiest way to keep her mind from turning toward the room in her head where names lived. Priya pushed open the door to an isolation room where a middle-aged woman lay, trembling hands twitching at the sheets. The woman's eyes were wide with the confusion of someone who could not understand why her body had betrayed her. Ma'am, Priya said gently. We are going to help you. You are safe. Safe was a word people used in hospitals, the way they used pillows, hoping softness could absorb impact. Lauren stepped in at Priya's side, gloved and gowned, mask tight. The woman's breathing was shallow, her skin a shade too pale. A nurse stood by the bed, eyes glassy with fatigue, ready to cry but too busy to let herself. Lauren checked the woman's pulse. Fast. Thin. She watched the chest rise, too shallow. She looked at the tongue, the lips, the edges of the eyes where oxygen deprivation showed itself early. How long has she been like this? Lauren asked. 15 minutes, the nurse replied. She said she felt dizzy, then her hands started tingling. She kept saying she tastes metal. Lauren nodded once. Barriers stay on, she said. No exposed skin. Change gloves after contact. Curtains stay pulled. Priya watched Lauren's hands move with quiet confidence and did not ask where that confidence came from. Priya cared about outcomes. Tonight, the outcome was survival. The decon teams arrived as if the hospital had called for an entirely different kind of medicine. They wore heavy protective suits and carried equipment that looked more like industrial maintenance than healthcare. They taped plastic sheeting across doorways. They placed mats at thresholds. They marked floors with bright tape that divided space into safe and unsafe. Kerr took over a corner of the nurses' station like it was an operations desk. She spoke to the decon lead, to facilities, to Brody, her words the same language as theirs. Airflow, surface contact, exposure windows, transfer routes. It sounded clinical, but there was a harshness beneath it. This was not a drill. This was a failure being managed. Marisol's officers handled crowd control. Staff were kept in assigned areas. Patients were told as little as possible because hospitals were built to prevent panic even when panic was deserved. Curtains stayed closed. Hallways stayed quiet. Outside, through the small window at the end of the corridor, Lauren saw flashes of red and blue lights. Police, fire, ambulances. media vans that always arrived when the worst thing happened. The city was waking up to something it could not name. An hour passed in fragments. Gloves changed, masks adjusted, patients stabilized. A few staff members were sent to a controlled area for evaluation because their hands shook or their throats tightened or they tasted metal and could not stop swallowing. Lauren moved room to room, obeying Priya's assignments, speaking in short, calm sentences, doing what nurses did when the world demanded more than a nurse should have to carry. Each time she stepped into a new room, she checked the vents without thinking. Each time she left, she stripped gloves the right way, slow and careful, because contamination was not dramatic. It was a whisper that stuck to skin. In the middle of it, Jonah approached her, near the medication room. His face was pale, his eyes red-rimmed with exhaustion. His confidence had not vanished, but it had been cut down to size. "You were right about the ICU pattern," Jonah said quietly. Lauren kept drawing up medication eyes on labels. "I do not want to be right," she replied. Jonah hesitated, then lowered his voice further. "You did a needle decompression earlier," he said. "You did it like you have done it before. You also just ran a containment flow like you built it." Lauren snapped the cap onto a syringe and turned. "If you have a complaint file, she said. Jonah shook his head once. "This is not a complaint," he replied. "It is a question." Lauren's eyes stayed steady. "Questions are expensive," she said. Jonah's throat worked. "Did the federal agents tell you what you are?" he asked. Lauren's gaze hardened slightly. "They told me what they want," she said. "That is not the same thing." Jonah looked like he wanted to push. Then a monitor alarm sounded down the hall, and his body obeyed his role. He turned and ran toward it. Lauren watched him go and felt the old, familiar ache behind her ribs. Even doctors who argued still ran when someone was dying. The hospital trained people into that kind of courage. Near dawn, when the decon teams had mapped the supply room and sealed evidence, when the last symptomatic patient had stabilized, when the ICU wing had been divided into zones like a battlefield marked by tape, Kerr approached Lauren again. This time, she did not block her path. She stood beside her in the corridor, both of them facing the glass at the far end, where the sky had started to lighten. Kerr's voice was quiet. "You know they did not come here for the hospital," she said. Lauren kept her eyes forward. "They came here because hospitals do not shoot back," she replied. Kerr's jaw tightened. "They came because you were here," she said. Lauren's gaze shifted to Kerr. "So move me," Lauren said. "If that is what you want." Kerr watched her. "Do you want to go?" she asked. Lauren did not answer immediately. She listened to the ICU behind her, the soft hiss of oxygen, the steady beeps, a nurse murmuring reassurance to a patient who could not sleep, a building trying to return to its purpose. Finally, Lauren said, "I want my patients to have nurses." Kerr's expression tightened in a way that suggested frustration and something else beneath it. "You are not safe here," she said. Lauren's voice stayed calm. "No one was safe here tonight," she replied. Brody approached, stepping into their conversation, like he belonged in it. His eyes were flat-focused. "We have facility access logs," he said. "Someone used an internal credential to place that crate in supply. Someone opened doors for the breach at the bay. Someone killed power from inside." Marisol across the corridor did not react outwardly, but Lauren saw the tightening in her shoulders. A hospital's worst enemy was always someone with access. Kerr's eyes narrowed. "We will handle that," she said. Marisol's voice carried. "You will not handle it alone," she said. Kerr's gaze moved to Marisol. The air between them tightened with the kind of conflict that did not need raised voices. Lauren stepped between it with the simplest truth she had. "Find the insider," she said, "and keep your containment teams here until the air returns are clean." Brody's eyes stayed on Lauren. "You speak like you have done this before," he said again. Lauren met his gaze. "I have," she replied. Brody's expression did not change. "Then you know they will not stop," he said. Lauren did not flinch. "I know," she answered. The words were simple, but they carried years. Ethan approached with Mako at his side. The dog looked tired now, the first real fatigue showing in his posture, but his eyes still tracked Lauren as if she were the center of his map. Ethan's voice was softer than before. "He will not settle," he said. "Not with you here." Lauren knelt slowly, careful with her joints, careful with the way her body moved. She brought her forehead near Mako's and held it there for a beat, breathing slow. "You did enough," she murmured. Mako's tail thumped once, a small, controlled movement that looked like relief. Ethan watched them, emotion tangled in his face. "He saved people tonight," he said. Lauren's hand rested on the dog's collar. "So did you," she replied. Ethan swallowed. "He recognized you," he said again, quieter, as if the repetition could make the truth less sharp. "That is why he ran." Lauren did not deny it. She did not confirm it. She simply said, "He remembered." Ethan's gaze tightened. From where he asked, Lauren lifted her eyes to his. The corridor light made the tiredness in her face unavoidable now. She looked like a woman who had survived something that kept trying to follow her. "From a place where we train dogs to find what people could not see," she said. Ethan's breath caught. He glanced at Kerr, then back at Lauren. "Were you military?" he asked. Lauren's voice was quiet. Once she replied. Ethan's throat worked. "And now?" he asked. Lauren stood slowly. "Now I work nights," she said. "Now I give meds. Now I bag patients when they stop breathing. Now I do not want my past to touch these halls." Kerr stepped closer. "Your past already did," she said. Lauren looked at the ICU doors. "Then I will clean it up," she replied. Marisol's phone buzzed. She answered and listened, then turned to the group. "Administration wants statements," she said. "They have lawyers and rehearsed phrases. Media is outside. They want a story that keeps the hospital from being sued into dust." Priya approached, pulling her mask down enough to speak, her face drawn with exhaustion. "They will get statements later," she said. "Right now, my staff needs water and a place to sit. And I need Nurse Hayes on the floor." Brody's gaze went to Priya, then back to Lauren. "She is not leaving our site," he said. Priya's eyes narrowed. "She is not leaving my patients," she replied. For a second, it looked like the corridor might become a different kind of standoff. Lauren broke it with the simplest possible action. She turned toward the nurse's station. She picked up a clipboard. She checked assignments. She walked back into the ICU wing like she belonged there, because she did. The next hour was quieter, but quieter did not mean easy. Staff rotated through decon stations, stripping contaminated gear, scrubbing hands until skin turned raw. Barriers remained in place. The supply room stayed sealed. The bay stayed locked down. The intruders were taken away, without fanfare, moved through service corridors so patients would not see them and ask questions that nobody wanted to answer. A patient down the hall, awake now and confused, reached out when Lauren adjusted his IV line. His fingers were weak but insistent. He looked at her with the foggy gratitude of someone who knew he had been close to the edge. "Thank you," he whispered. Lauren paused for a beat, her hand still on the IV tubing. "You are welcome," she said softly. His eyes drifted toward Mako, who sat near the nurse's station, with Ethan finally allowing himself to rest. "Dog," the patient murmured. "He is working," Lauren said. The patient's fingers tightened around hers briefly. "You too," he said. Lauren's throat tightened. She pulled her hand back, gently finished the adjustment, and moved on before anyone could see what the words did to her face. When dawn fully arrived, it looked ordinary. Pale light through hospital windows. A city beginning its routines. Coffee brewed somewhere on a different floor. A janitor pushing a cart like any other morning. Ordinary light on an extraordinary night. Near the end of Lauren's shift, Kerr found her in the break room. The room smelled like cold coffee and stale crackers. The TV on the wall played muted morning news with closed captions scrolling about traffic and weather, blissfully unaware. Lauren sat at the table, hands wrapped around a paper cup she had forgotten to drink. Her shoulders were finally slack, fatigue settling into her bones now that the urgent work had slowed. Kerr stood in the doorway, posture less rigid than earlier, though her eyes stayed sharp. "We can move you," she said. "Protection resources assess." "If belagsen pa." Lauren looked up. "Safe," she repeated. Kerr stepped closer. "They targeted you," she said. They will do it again. Lauren's gaze stayed steady. Then you keep them away from hospitals, she replied. Kerr's jaw tightened. You cannot stay here, she said. Lauren sipped the cold coffee and grimaced at the taste. I can, she said. This is where I am useful. Kerr watched her for a long beat. You are choosing purpose over survival, she said. Lauren's voice stayed calm. I am choosing patience over hiding, she replied. Kerr's expression softened by a fraction, just enough to reveal a person under the agent. They will watch you, she said. Lauren met her gaze. Then I will watch them back, she replied. Kerr's phone buzzed again. She glanced at it, then tucked it away. We will maintain a perimeter, she said. We will keep people on site until we have full clearance. Lauren nodded once. Do your job, she said. Kerr hesitated, then asked the question she had avoided all night. What do you want me to call you? She said. Lauren Hayes is a name. Is it yours? Lauren's fingers tightened on the cup. She stared at the coffee for a beat, then looked up. It is the name my patients know, she said. It is enough. Kerr held her gaze, then nodded once, accepting that this was as close as she would get. In the corridor outside, Ethan stood with Mako leash in hand. The dog's ears perked when Lauren stepped out. His tail thumped once, slow, relieved. Ethan's voice was quiet. They are taking him back to the unit, he said. He will need rest. He has been running on adrenaline like the rest of us. Lauren knelt beside Mako one last time. She pressed her forehead to his breathing in the clean, warm scent of fur that had nothing to do with chemicals or blood or fear. Go home, she whispered. You did enough. Mako whined softly, reluctant, then settled as if he understood the words, even if he did not want to obey them. Ethan's eyes glistened with exhaustion. He could not hide anymore. He will look back, he said. Lauren's mouth tightened into something gentle. I know, she replied. Ethan clipped the leash shorter and gave a quiet command. Mako rose and walked with him, turning his head once, eyes locking on Lauren, then again at the corner, as if memorizing the shape of her before distance swallowed her. Lauren watched until he disappeared. Then she turned toward the ICU doors. Priya stood there, arms crossed, mask hanging at her neck, now her face lined with fatigue and resolve. You are staying? Priya said. Lauren nodded once. I am, she replied. Priya studied her. I do not need your history, she said. I need your hands and your calm. And tonight, you gave both. Lauren's throat tightened. She kept her voice even. It is my job, she said. Priya's eyes held hers. It is more than that, she replied, then turned and walked back into the unit. Marisol passed Lauren in the hallway, phone pressed to her ear. She paused long enough to speak without stopping. You are going to have a conversation with me, she said. Lauren met her gaze. Yes, Lauren replied. Marisol's eyes narrowed, assessing. After you sleep, she added, then moved on. Lauren stepped to the nurse's station, picked up the next set of orders, and began moving again because motion kept the world from closing in. Outside the city lived its ordinary morning. Inside Harborview, Mercy stood scarred but standing, and Lauren Hayes kept walking the halls, not disappearing, because some people did not get to stop being who they were. They simply chose where to stand.